Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala Penei Shabbat Kavela.
Pause up the music. Oh, my dog thinks somebody's here at our house. How are you? Oh, you froze.
Rose. You see me now?
Yep.
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm
You
good.
have two little ones now.
I know, it's crazy.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
I'll show you a picture.
I'd love to see a picture.
I'm gonna find a picture with both of them. Well, this one works.
Oh my
And the
goodness.
dog too.
Oh my goodness.
I
That is
know
such a
the
beautiful,
baby started
joyful
daycare
picture.
this week, which is
Oh
crazy.
yeah? Is that after, did you take like some time off?
Yeah, I took like 12 weeks.
Okay, that's good.
And then Joel's been on leave for probably 2 months or so.
Oh, great. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so nice. You guys got some like overlapping time together.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah, that was good. So just trying to tread
Yeah.
water a little bit and survive.
It's a new chapter. Like when the kids go into daycare, it's you have space, but you also have this like longing of like my child. I miss them being by me.
I know.
What's happening during their day?
Your son is Forrest, right?
Yes.
How's he doing?
He's great. He's in first grade.
Oh my
I know. He's like a kid. He's full on kid. But he's doing really good. He's super sweet. He uh like really hyper focuses on stuff. Like it used to be Spider-Man. He was super into Spider-Man. And now he's really into Minecraft and Pokemon and just video games, all things boy.
All the boy. I'm reading a book now called Boy Mom,
Oh, wow.
and
Oh,
it's
do you have a boy?
I have two boys.
They're two boys. Oh, wow, that's awesome. Boy
Yeah,
crew.
boy crew. So it's all about like just kind of what it means to raise boys and this kind of
Right.
society and
Yeah. Oh, that's
like
so cool.
on
I'll
my
have to
mind
check that
now.
out. Boy Mom?
Boy Mom by her. The author's name is Ruth Whipman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi,
because
Sheila and Tahila.
Hi.
Oh, Tahila, I'm so glad you're here.
I'll even put on my camera. I signed on when you said I have two boys, and I was like, what?
I know. We didn't really post for the second one. Tahila is a dear friend from Chicago. So,
oh,
It's so good to see you.
and Sheila's part of my community at Or Hadash. So we just got like a nice mix here. I'm gonna give folks and Andrea and I met on did we meet on the Jewish Women's Getaway? Is that where we met?
yeah, I think we met Jewish Women's Getaway. Yeah.
I feel like that has like continued to bear fruit. Like people that I met on that retreat, and then
It's a sweet place. It
yeah,
is.
Where is it?
it's a retreat that they run at Camp Ramah Rome once a year. And I was there in 2021, I think it was.
Yeah, it was a while ago for me too.
Yeah. Well, we'll give people a couple more minutes to arrive. I think there's a few more folks that are going to be joining us, and I'll just kind of toggle in my email to make sure people are able to get in. And we're joined here by Shira, who is representing Shabbat across Atlanta. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that is once we get started.
Hi, Shira.
Hi, it's so good to connect with you, Sheila and Andrea. This is so fun.
Same.
Hold on one
Connect
second.
with
I
you
think
too.
I'm needed for a moment.
Yes, do your mom thing.
She's not doing anything right now for her mom.
Nothing. She does nothing, I'm sure. And I've got Joel's putting our toddler to bed, and I've got the baby monitor right here, but he's pretty conked out. I say, knock on wood, I hope he stays conked out for a while. Let's see. Okay, 7:34. I'm going to give people one more minute, and then I'm recording this, so if people come late and they want to get caught up, they can back watch. But we'll start in 1 minute, because I want to honor everyone who's here right on time.
Andrea, I feel like we are very overdue for a catch up as well.
I agree. You're like in a different role now.
I'm still doing the J Baby thing.
Okay,
I'm just
cool.
also doing Shabbat across Atlanta.
And also parenting.
Table and parenting, yes, that. I launched One Table in 2017. And so with my familiarity with the program, the platform, the team, how that works, they really wanted me to come back and help out with this role. So it's been really fun to step back into this for a little while.
I'm excited to hear more about it. I've seen like little inklings. And then when Rabbi Lauren posted today that she was like everything that you talked about going over, I was like, yes, I want deeper understanding of all of this and like all the rituals. And then the excitement of like Shabbat across Atlanta sounds really cool. So excited for this teaser.
Perfect. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. And if others join us, beautiful. And if it's just us, also beautiful. So welcome everyone. I know all of you, but I'll just introduce myself. I'm Rabbi Lauren Henderson. I'm at Or Hadash congregation here in Atlanta in Sandy Springs. And I know all of you from whether Or Hadash or other parts of Atlanta life or Chicago before I came here. So really glad we could bring this little group together. And I'll just tell you how this class came to be, which is I had been thinking for a while about doing a little teaching around Friday night Leil Shabbat rituals. And then when I came back from maternity leave, I had an email from Shira in my inbox about Shabbat across Atlanta. And it was like really ideal timing because we had wanted to kind of grow an empowered approach to Shabbat at Or Hadash and give people more tools to be able to make Shabbat their own. And then I'm like, oh, this isn't just at Or Hadash, it's happening citywide in a really massive way. So I want to hand it over to Shira to talk a little bit about what Shabbat across Atlanta is, and then we'll dive into the ritual piece.
Amazing. Hi, I'm Shira, for those who might be following up on this recording at a later date. And so I'm really excited to tell you about Shabbat across Atlanta. It is a Atlanta citywide program basically to help more people experience the joy and the ritual of Shabbat, and knowing that there is over 1,000 people across the city from every different background in every single different neighborhood, all experiencing this moment in time of this, sacred unity of the ritual and the power of Shabbat, and feeling that connection to that community and kind of that greater, sacred spiritual experience. So we have many different Shabbat workshops, including this one that I'm very excited about. Different types, different styles. They're all meant to be a deep dive into understanding the rituals a little bit differently than maybe the traditional sense that we've kind of grown accustomed to, and more than what we learned when we were perhaps younger. And it all culminates in this January 31st Shabbat dinner. We're asking everyone to sign up, which means it's like our way of counting and using the data. And so if you guys have not yet, Sheila, I actually think you did post your dinner, if I saw it. And then basically you sign up on the One Table platform. We have a host gift that we're giving to families. It's a challah cover. It's all like Atlanta themed. A challah cover, Shabbat candlesticks for tea lights holder. We have a Shabbat ritual guide that's very Atlanta focused. And I think actually maybe the greatest power of all of this is that we have a Shabbat ritual guide that has been signed off by a Reform rabbi, a conservative rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, and a Chabad rabbi. I think there's some power in that.
That's amazing.
And it's all about just hosting a Friday night Shabbat experience in whatever way is meaningful to you in your home, or at a friend's home or in a common space. It's just creating whatever makes that Friday night Shabbat ritual and experience meaningful to you. So you can have just your family, you can have just yourself, you can invite guests, you can invite anyone, intergenerational, whoever you want to create this experience for, anyone can be part of it this Friday night. We also are providing a $50 gift card to families as a way to say, like, we want you to make this Shabbat extra special. So do something with this to create that special feeling, whether it's buying flowers or an extra special dessert or using it towards hosting people in your home, whatever it is. We just really want people to find that spiritual intentionality in a way that is meaningful to them. So that is my Shabbat across Atlanta spiel. If you have any questions, obviously let me know.
Thank you. I didn't know about all of those extra goodies. So that is very good, nice incentive to register.
I will say the gifts and the gift cards right now, it's just for the first 100 people that sign up. We have about 75 registered. So,
so
there's still time to get
under the wire. Yeah.
Although obviously anyone can sign up at any time and participate in Shabbat.
For sure. Well, thank you for letting us know more about the program, and you're welcome to stay on as long as you can, but I also know that you have parenting duties to attend to. So thank you, Shira. And we will launch in. I want to just kind of give you an overview of how I'm thinking about tonight. It's going to be very conversational, collaborative learning, because I truly do not believe that there is one singular right way to make Friday night happen in a way that's elevated and special. And I, as a person who loves Shabbat, and as a rabbi, and as a mom, and a partner, and all those things, I feel like my Shabbat rituals are constantly evolving. And particularly, you know, when it was COVID and it was just me and my husband doing Friday night dinners, we had to evolve how we were doing Shabbat. And now that we're the parents of a toddler and an infant, and Friday night is chaos, and we're trying to like make Shabbat happen for our kids in this very intentional way in a span of 10 minutes before I have to run and lead services at Shul. It's extra tricky, but it's really like challenging me in the best possible way to think about, and this is really the theme of tonight, what is the essence of each ritual that's part of the Friday night experience? So what we're going to do tonight is I want to just give like a little overview of a particular kind of orientation to Friday night, one that resonates for me and may resonate for you. It's a kind of Kabbalistic, mystical orientation to the Friday night Shabbat experience. And then I want to go through, we'll see, you know, how we do with time. We may just, we may go really deep on one or two rituals, or we may spend time looking at all five. But my intention is that we're going to talk about candle lighting, family blessings, blessing our partners if we have them, or our kids if we have them, Kiddush, hand washing, and hamotzi. So we'll see how many of those we get through. And I want to talk with each of those five rituals about a particular way of thinking about Jewish ritual, and give you a framework that I have found useful over the years. And then we'll talk and collaborate together and brainstorm how we might make that a reality. So that'll get a little more clear when we get into the specific rituals themselves. But first, I want to offer kind of this intention for Shabbat as a whole. So I have, as part of my sort of Jewish Judaica collection that I've been amassing over the years, a number of different what are called benchers. You may have these in your home, or you may have seen them before, but they're these little books that contain the texts of Jewish, mostly of Friday night rituals. They contain Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, and the different Kiddush blessings that are said on different holidays, but really they're meant for use on Friday night. And each bencher, it's a Yiddish word, means just like a blesser. They contain the blessings. Each one kind of has its own particular take and ideology, but this one, which is called Yedid Nefesh, after one of the Friday night prayers, I really love how it approaches Shabbat as a whole. Oh, we have one more person joining us. Perfect timing. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I just excerpted a little bit from this venture that I want to read together. So where are we? One second. I used to be so efficient at this. And then, okay, here we are. Okay. All right, so I just gave a little excerpt from this, and I'm going to read this passage out loud, and then we can discuss. The unique Friday night rituals, both in the synagogue and the home, are largely innovations of the 16th century Kabbalists, the Jewish mystics, from Tzfat in Israel. And the Kabbalists sought a mystical union with the divine. Central to their vision was a desire to heal the world by reuniting those things that have been torn apart, mending the rifts that fill the world with pain. Friday night, then, is a wedding, a moment when separate beings merge magically into one. This lofty aim is expressed in the mundane as well as the cosmic. Shabbat is the time that we pause after a week of work to unite the disparate parts of ourselves, using the spirit and song of Shabbat to feel whole again. On Shabbat, we reunite the pieces of our family, sitting, singing, and studying together. In blessing each other, we overcome the distance that grows during a busy week and renew our wholeness as a family. And on Shabbat, we too reconnect with God, pausing to feel the divine presence and to renew our commitment to making that presence felt in the world. So I'll just pause there. You can read the rest on your own. But this approach, the idea that the rituals of Shabbat and Shabbat itself is about mending the rifts that exist in our world and overcoming brokenness to come toward a sense of wholeness, I think is quite beautiful. And I feel this, and it's even with small kids right now, which is where I'm really practicing Shabbat most intimately, in the sense that even in the most chaotic week, even in the most chaotic moment, I'm learning how the power of these rituals, which I think for little kids and also for adults are kind of like magic. You light candles, you can feel something transform, or you're holding this cup of like delicious grape juice and saying these words, which are, to non-Hebrew speakers, like a magical incantation almost. I see in the eyes of my toddler, like he knows that something is different during and after these things are happening. And I think for us as adults too, and we're gonna really explore this and think about in our own experiences how this has happened, but that these rituals and all Jewish rituals really, when done with intentionality, have tremendous power. And for the Kabbalists, they actually believed that the doing of mitzvot and the doing of Jewish ritual had a metaphysical effect on the world itself, that we could affect healing in the world by the performance of mitzvot. That's not just about, it is about how it brings our families together and it brings ourselves internally a sense of wholeness, but it also can, some way, whether we can understand rationally or not, it creates these ripple effects that extend so far beyond our homes. So I'll just stop there and I'll just ask you, if you've felt that to be true ever, if in your own practice of Shabbat, if you've felt that sense that these rituals kind of mend rifts or create some wholeness in a time of brokenness. And if you have an example of how that may or may not have been true.
I have very much felt you talked about that feeling of like magic, especially with saying these, the Hebrew words that I am not fluent in Hebrew, so a lot of it does feel like mystical and magical. And I really get that feeling from my son too, who's 7, and like I feel it does feel like it is like mending these places of like feeling a part of something bigger. Um, Especially when we do it at home, it feels, you don't get that whole like I'm doing this spanning this time frame where everyone else is also doing it at the same time. But when we've gotten into groups with other people, it's almost like this magical language that, your friends also know, and these rituals that they are also doing. And so that like very much feels that like mending of that rift and that creating that magic and that just ritual feels magical to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to share what popped into my head is that, I only learned about this as an adult, so I had no experience of it as a kid. But then when I did start to be at people's houses with the candle lighting, it reminded me of all the chaos and anxiety and panic that I would feel leading up to getting on a plane. And then when I would sit in the plane, put my seatbelt on, and the plane would take off, there was this feeling of relief, like, oh, now there's nothing more I can do. Like a breath of relief that everything that's done is done and what's next is next. It just, I remembered that that was the only time I ever felt some kind of peace of there's nothing more I need to do right now but sit in the plane seat. So that was my early experience of seeing candle lighting. It was like everything that happened before didn't matter. And I wasn't really thinking yet about later. It was just watching those beautiful flames.
Yeah. Yeah, that so resonates for me, though, just the way you expressed that. That's how I feel at candle lighting too. And particularly after a chaotic week, or particularly in a moment where there's a lot of anxiety or fear, this sense of
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, it's out of my hands now. And not in a disempowered way, but in a like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't say this so much in Jewish space, but like a give it up to God, like, all right, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's no longer mine to be anxious about.
And I like what you said about the physicality and multisensory of the rituals, because it's not just my eyes, but the smell of the candle and like it's like a full multimedia experience.
So that's I want to let, if there's anyone else that wants to share on this sort of in general, to share. But that's actually exactly where I want to go now. So this is the framework that I want to offer you that was taught to me when I was a college student, actually, that I have never forgotten about. So I'll just share like very briefly. Part of my story is I really did not grow up, deeply immersed in Jewish ritual at all. My family went to synagogue. I had a bat mitzvah. Most of my Jewish life took place in the synagogue because we didn't really do much at home. But then when I got to college, I was like on this spiritual quest. And in particular, because I grew up in the South and I was around a lot of conservative Christians, that was sort of my model for spirituality, was that very evangelical kind of spirituality. And as a freshman in college, I had this sort of concern that I didn't really know a lot of Jews that were spiritual. I knew Jews, I didn't even really know Jews that were religious, but I didn't know people that like had that sort of intangible like connection to their Judaism, that I don't know, it's hard to put into words, but just had very few models of that in my life. And I was I was like really seeking it. And I remember I went to this, like, went to college in Houston. I went to this Jewish day of learning across the Houston Jewish community. And I went to a class with a conservative rabbi named Ranon Teller, who would eventually end up being a dear friend and mentor of mine, but I didn't know him at the time. And he taught a class called The Spiritual Practice of Jewish Ritual. And he introduced us to these two ideas, which I'm going to introduce you to now. So my screen back up. Okay. So he taught us these two terms, ikar and tafel. These are used in different ways depending on the different Jewish contexts, but this is how they were taught to me. And I think this is a bit of a more mystical Jewish take. So the word, I'm actually going to start on the right because it's Hebrew and then go to the left. So the word ikar literally means essence. And the word tafel, I was taught that it means like the vehicle. But you could think of these things almost like there's other words for this too, but almost like body and soul, or the physical component and the spiritual component. In other cases, they mean like more like primary and secondary, but the way I'm thinking about them, I don't think that one is primary and the other is secondary. I actually think that they are both core, and they both are deeply interrelated with one another. So let me elaborate on this a little more. When we talk about the tafel, or the vehicle, what I mean by that is when we're performing a ritual, we want to ask, what are its concrete sensory elements? What are the physical parts, the sensory parts that make up a ritual? So we could ask, what do you see during the ritual? What do you hear, smell, touch, taste, all of those sensory parts? We want to ask, when thinking about the tafel, what are the words that are said, if there are words that are said, and what are the actions that are performed? And we also want to ask, what are the physical items that are necessary? I actually pulled down my little Shabbat candlesticks before this that my dear friend Elise, who does pottery, made for me a few years ago. So yeah, often rituals require particular physical objects, but the tafel is about the vehicle, that you could think of it like the vehicles that carry the ritual, the concrete that allow the ritual to be. And then when we think about the ikar, the essence, we want to ask questions like, what is this ritual's essence and purpose? What are the emotions and the feelings that are associated with the ritual? We might ask, what effect does this ritual have on us when we perform it, both individually and collectively? And then to get, into a question that probably it's impossible to answer, but we might want to ask, what effect does the ritual have on a larger scale, cosmically, metaphysically? What effect does this ritual, like the Kabbalists believed, what effect does it have on our world? And we may not know, but I think performing a ritual in some way is believing that it has ripple effects beyond us. So what I want to do tonight, for the next, 45 minutes or so, is go through each of these core 5 Friday night Leil Shabbat rituals, and think about all of these questions, both the ikar and the tafel, and then think about how they might impact our own practice of the ritual together. So before we go on, just want to ask if there's any questions about this, if this framework sort of makes sense, or if you have questions so far. See a thumbs up from Sheila. Great. Okay. All right, and welcome Andy, and welcome Sabria. Glad you're here. Okay. All right, and for anyone who's just coming in, we recorded the beginning, so if you want to go back and listen to the recording, we'll send that out afterward. Okay. And I'll also send out this sheet so you have the text too afterward. Okay. So let's start with candle lighting. In Hebrew, it's called hadlakat nerot, the lighting of Shabbat candles, the ritual that begins Shabbat. So this may feel kind of, I'm assuming we're all sort of at different places on our Jewish journeys, and so I have no assumptions about sort of past knowledge. I'm going to make an assumption that I could be. This may be a poor assumption to make, but I'm going to assume that this is a ritual that you've either performed yourself or you've at least seen done or been a part of in Jewish spaces before. So with each of these, I'm going to do this, and I hope this is okay. I want to ask you actually just for a moment to close your eyes. And I want to invite you to remember back to a time when you either were doing the ritual of Shabbat candle lighting yourself, or you were in a space where someone else is performing this ritual. So just think of one example, or you can just imagine it if you can't think of a specific memory. And I really want you to try to remember or imagine every possible sensory element of what this Shabbat candlelighting experience was like. So what do you see in front of you? Just bring to mind what objects are present. What space are you in? Are there other people there with you, or are you by yourself? What do you smell? Do you smell anything? What do you hear? Is it quiet? Are there words being said? Just bring to mind any other sensory components of this ritual moment. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes if they're closed. And I would love to just hear some of the images that came to mind. And actually, I'm going to take some notes and I'm going to put them. This is going to be sort of our shared ritual construction document. So I'll just ask anyone just to share. You can unmute or you can put in the chat. What'd you see? What'd you smell? What'd you hear?
I can share. So a couple of weeks ago, my son came home from, or no, he hadn't, he's coming home from winter break from UGA, and he brought a friend of his whose parents live in Israel. So his friend was with us for a couple of days, and they were here for Friday night. So we had Friday night dinner, and we were standing around this kitchen island, and I often think about this, how when I'm lighting the candle, you can kind of smell the match when it hits the box, right? That smell. And then holding my hands up, I can see the light kind of coming through my fingers when I'm holding them up to the candles. And that's really something I think of, how it's kind of a special part of the whole candle lighting ritual. And everybody, I don't remember if they sang the prayer with me, but it was just wonderful having having everybody together to kind of welcome the dinner and the whole experience together.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Especially that kind of reunion moment of
Yeah.
family being reunited and new friends and new Israeli connection. Beautiful.
I also, the smell of the match is very visceral. And even the like bringing of the, like creating a little bit of wind when you're bringing in the light. I don't really know the meaning of the circling of the three other than like bringing the light into you, but I love that like physicality. For me, I see like my husband and my son being at the table and, you know, waiting to eat a delicious meal and, um, yeah, bringing that light in. We have like our dinner table we're kind of situated at the top of a hill and we have this big window. And so when we light the candles and we have our candles going, the whole, anyone who walks by can see it. And there's something in that feels both like I feel both proud and vulnerable in that sense, like having the candles lit. But I do feel very safe in our neighborhood, but it is like a both and kind of feeling.
Yeah. Wow, wow. And we think about that a lot with Hanukkah candles, but on Shabbat candles, um, it's all the time. So beautiful. Mm. And there's that duality there. Yeah, Tehila, did you want to share?
Yeah, the word that came up for me before you said vulnerable and then it echoed it was intimate. I remember that, I mean, first of all, it certainly was a completely foreign thing to me the first time I observed it. And thank you for inviting to like go back in time because I'm even like, boy, I took for granted that I was a total stranger invited into all these Orthodox Jewish homes in my 20s. And I don't know, I feel jaded about it now in my 50s, but it was magical. It was like I got to go into people's homes and experience this intimate experience. And so hearing you, like, even smells that I remember, like the teenage girl's hair was all wet because they had just, showered before Shabbat. So all the conditioner, I could smell that. And then the smells from the kitchen and I guess it reminds me when I was listening, almost like what I feel before a play starts when I'm backstage as an actress. And it's like all this momentum and build up, and then the curtain rises.
Mm, mm.
So I don't know, that was fun to just like relive that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think we're starting to get into some of the essence, because some of the words that you all share, the intimacy and the pride and the vulnerability, we're starting to see how the tafel elements create the ikar elements. But before we name a little more of those, I just want to name, maybe obvious to us, but I want to name some of the sort of core elements that are part of the vehicle of Shabbat candle lighting. So we have 2 Shabbat candles. And I think what I love about these Shabbat rituals is that while you can have, beautiful candlesticks and this idea of Hidur mitzvah, beautifying the mitzvah is present, you can also just have 2 little tea lights. You can even, if you don't have anything, you can flip on a light switch before and bless a light switch. So there's no barrier to making this moment happen, but there's always a deeper intentionality that can come from planning and preparing and having all your items ready to go. But so many of the things that you mentioned were not about like having beautiful ritual items, but they were about the people you were with. Let me just look at my notes here. We mentioned the waving of the hands, the covering of the eyes, the seeing the light between your fingers. Like these are sort of core physical elements. And the Shabbat candle lighting is kind of unique in Jewish rituals because there's this concept or idea that for most rituals, we do the blessing before the action. The blessing kind of permits us in a way to then benefit from the action that we're about to do. It's like the blessing is a gateway into the action. But Shabbat candle lighting is unique because it's the blessing itself that brings on Shabbat. The words we say, Shabbat happens like when the sun goes down at a certain time, but also we create Shabbat. And that's one of its powers is we have the ability to make time holy. So when we say Lahadlik Ner Shel Shabbat at the end of that blessing, Shabbat is like, it's turned on. And so therefore, if you're coming with a Shomer Shabbat approach and you don't light a fire when it's Shabbat, then you're in trouble because wait, I can't light the fire anymore because I just made it Shabbat by saying the blessing. So that's why traditionally we would light candles first, then cover our eyes, and then say the blessing. So we've lit the candles, but we're not benefiting from the beauty of the lights until we've said the blessing, until it's fully Shabbat. And it's just this weird kind of inversion, but it makes this ritual have a particular unique quality to it. And I love that sense of myself that when you uncover your eyes, and I see this with my kid now too, like that magic. It's like Tehillah, you said, the curtain rises, like you uncover your eyes, and then, okay, now this beautiful 25-hour play has begun. Just to spend a little time just on the tafel a little more, some of the sort of more fixed elements, we would say, again, fixed, but people make this their own in all sorts of ways. So again, I'll use this word traditionally. Candle lighting is done 18 minutes before sundown. 18, this core significant number, the number for life, chai, in Jewish tradition. So, you look at your weather app and count back 18 minutes from whenever it says sundown is, or whatever calendar, if you're looking for kind of a time to light Shabbat candles. Some people do it even earlier than that, earlier in the afternoon. Actually, in Jerusalem, if you're in Jerusalem, the custom is to light candles almost 45 minutes before Shabbat begins. You have this idea that when you're in this holy city, Shabbat lasts for even longer than it does for anywhere else. So that was an interesting thing that I learned when I was living there. So all of these components are part of the tafel. But, and again, we started to kind of get here in your descriptions, but I want to go now to the ikar of candle lighting. And we listed a couple of words that I want to put down. We said intimacy, we said pride, we said vulnerability. But I want to just invite you for a moment to close your eyes again. And kind of take yourself back to that memory the same one that you were in before. What do you feel on an emotional or spiritual level? If you had to put the essence of this moment into words, what is the essence of this moment? What do you sense? Does anyone want to share? Sheila. I think Sheila's trying to
There we
unmute.
go. Ugh.
Yeah, good. I know.
The word gratitude comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Just everybody together taking, they could have gone off for the night, and just the special moment of just being together as, a family, like an extended family with this extra person. I just felt gratitude.
Beautiful.
A couple words came up for me: grounding, breath, and connection. I feel like it's an opportunity to settle into myself, to feel grounded, to take a breath, either collectively or just on my own, a deepening my breath, and yeah, feeling that connection and that gratitude, very much like Sheila said.
Great. Sabria.
Oh, hi. Um, I, I, I would say like I think the same thing that just keeps coming. I mean, I'm definitely going back to a certain memory, but probably there's like a theme too. I would say comfort. I was a little shy because it seems all cheesy, but like comfort, love. I was thinking magic. I would agree with the sentiment on grounding. Maybe that's tied into like magic or the comfort. Those are feelings that I feel a lot, but definitely just like a sense of like peace and comfort.
Yeah.
And I think, just to piggyback on the connection, tonight we were talking about, social media and how it's hard to feel connected in this time in society, and that just putting away everything else and just focusing on this moment, I think kind of establishes that kind of a special feeling of togetherness.
Yeah. I just saw an article today that really was about not just like the loneliness epidemic, but how more and more people are choosing solitude, and not necessarily in a good way, but this kind of self distancing that so many people are just like, oh, it's easier to just stay home and scroll than it is to go out to a bar or invite friends to see a movie together. And I feel like Shabbat, you can do it by yourself. You don't have to have people around you, but there is this beauty when it's shared, and there's this beauty in coming together around. These rituals do bring people together, and we'll talk more about that interconnection with the others, especially this next one, the blessing of the family. But yeah, I feel like they're antidotes for some of what is really ailing our society right now.
I just want to add real quick before you move on to the next one, is that I have a lot to say about this subject, and I think what I'm remembering is the feeling of being able to be connected but not enmeshed, like not to lose myself in the connection, because the rest of Shabbat got very social, and this was a way where I could be inside myself alone and together with the other people standing next to me as they were inside themselves and alone. So it's like alone
Yeah.
together. It's like how I
Beautiful.
remember when I used to go to the library in high school. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't as lonely as when I was in my room studying, but I was in my own space with people around me.
Well, you're bringing up, I think, what's a really beautiful, kind of back to this idea of intimacy, but this beautiful element of Shabbat candlelighting, which is that many people use this as a time to whisper prayers over their families, over their friends, private prayers. It's really seen as a kind of auspicious, like we say, 8 ratzon, a time of divine favor. And so, in those moments where your eyes are closed before you open them and take in the light and then continue on with the beginnings of Shabbat, people will close their eyes and they'll just utter words of gratitude, or, prayers that their family who are far away be kept safe. And I think it is speaking to this idea of like, you're together, but each person is also kind of having their own individual experience as well.
And then lastly, what you said about the ripple effect, and I think someone else said it, is that at any given moment on Shabbat, like it's happening just a few seconds off or minutes off, as as the time zones change. You know what I mean? I don't know what you call that, the latitude, longitudes. So it's like a one continual igniting moment after moment individually and then all together for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes, for sure.
it's not like how a Zoom meeting is happening. We're all in our different time zones, but it's at the same time.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah,
could
okay.
imagine, yeah, like with sundown happening kind of at different times across the country, across the world, like
Right.
Shabbat is.
So at every moment there's someone else lighting.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I'll just say one more thing, which actually is, I think, connected to something you said earlier too, Tehila, which is for me, I think so much of the essence of this ritual is about, at least right now in my life, kind of making peace with what is left unfinished. This idea that I can't do it all. And, Shabbat is going to start when it starts, no matter what I say about it. And there is this real, like, this sigh of like relief that it's now out of my hands and I'm no longer in control. And I can just, I think it's what Abraham Joshua Heschel really talked about in this relationship with time, this sense of shifting into no longer trying to dominate space and make things happen according to our will and create and change and do, but rather, okay, now I'm shifting into just receptivity, just being. And they think there's a power with the candles. You know, we could gaze at candles all night long. And I mean, one explanation for the tradition of having two is that really it was just practically about having light in your home to eat dinner by. But for us, you know, we don't most of us don't need them for the actual light, but we could just gaze at them and kind of bask in that glow of like, oh, it's all out of our control now. Okay, there's much more we could say about this, but I want to move on. I'm pretty certain now we're not going to get through all 5 of these. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about these blessings because this is sort of interesting. So let me give a little intro because this was not I as a kid who didn't grow up super connected to Judaism, I knew about Shabbat candle lighting. We lit Shabbat candles from time to time. Certainly had done that in the synagogue. I don't think I saw someone do what's called Birkat Habanim, blessing their children, or Birkat Hamishpacha, Birkat Kohanim, the different phrases for this. I don't think I saw that until I was in college and I went to Shabbat dinner at this rabbi's house. That was new for me. So what you'll see often in many Jewish families is that parents will gather their children around and place their hands on their children's heads and say the words of the traditional Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, or it's called also Birkat Habanim, blessing the children. And some people will say, Yesimcha Elohim ke Ephraim lechi Menashe. May God make you like Ephraim and Menashe, which was in last week's Torah portion, coming from the blessing that Jacob gave to his grandsons. And for girls that say Yesimech Elohim Isar Rivka Rachel v'Leah. May God make you like the matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And then they'll say the words of the priestly blessing. May God bless you and keep you safe and healthy. May God shine light on you and be gracious to you. And may God lift up God's presence toward you and grant you peace. I remember, just personally, like when I was in college and I saw this for the first time, I remember getting really kind of jealous. Like it was this moment of feeling a little bit alone and missing my own family and, longing for the connection of family. So I know for some, this, especially when you're kind of feeling more alone, this moment can actually be a little bit hard. But now I'm thinking a lot about how when we celebrate Shabbat with other people, how we can acknowledge the unique gifts and traits of each person that they're with. And included, I'm going to ask the same questions I did in a moment to kind of think back on your own experience. So that's coming, but I'll just say one more sentence, which is under this category of blessing the family, it's not just blessing one's children, but also this I don't want to call it a prayer exactly, but the recitation of Proverbs 31, which is called Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, which is interesting. That's also something I didn't see until I was a young adult. And in many homes, this chapter of Proverbs 31 is sung. It's kind of a hymn to the super mom, the woman who is doing it all, running her business out there in the society, and also holding down the fort at home. And I didn't really know what to make of this exactly. And many people are like, wait a second, or what do we do with these sort of conceptions of gender here? But I learned that initially, when this passage, Eshet Chayil, was incorporated into the rituals of Friday night, I'm going to share this or stop this so I can see your faces. There we go. It wasn't really about the wife or the matriarch of the household at all. It was actually a Kabbalistic, a Jewish mystical approach, a kind of a hymn to the Shekhinah, the feminine divine presence of God, that it was sort of sung to this feminine aspect of God, and everyone would sing it. We weren't sort of singling out the woman of the home. And it was only later that it kind of gained that more personal context. That's just a little statement of overview about these family blessings. But I want, again, to invite you now, just if you can, if you've seen this before, if you've done these rituals before, either the Isha Chayil or the blessing of the children, we'll start with the tafel. What are some of the physical, the sensory elements that you remember? So close your eyes for a moment. Think back to time when you either did one of these rituals yourself or saw them performed around you, or just imagine. And what were some of the key sensory components? What do you see? What do you feel, or what are you touching? Is there touch involved? What do you hear? Are there particular words being said? Any other sensory elements that were really core to the experience of this ritual? So I'd love to hear, once again, what came to mind.
I didn't know about this blessing until I went to synagogue at a Reformed congregation. And the point of saying that is I was in my 30s and I had my children, they were young. And when they were old enough to be with me in synagogue, I remember my oldest kind of squirming around, like he didn't necessarily love, having my hand on his head. And then hearing, my husband reciting the words with me. So that's kind of what I recall.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm anticipating that happening with us too, like the squirmy kid and like, mom, get your hand off my head. This brings up, it's just so tender, this idea, because what we're really talking about here is this idea that we want to protect the little people, the other people around us, particularly our kids, but any members of our family. And if we really think about like what is going on here, it is this, and this is maybe getting into the Ikar a little bit, this idea that through our hands, there is this transmission of a flow of blessing and protection. And I feel that in a very intimate way when I bless my kids now on Shabbat. And for a couple of weeks, I remember it didn't happen, or I was at shul and I wasn't getting to do it. And I then learned, like Joel was making sure every Friday night when he was putting Rafi to bed to make sure to, do Birkat Kohanim. And I was made me feel much better about not being at home. But I think this idea of a flow of blessing is quite intense and beautiful. And what does it mean to kind of receive that flow of blessing, and whether, you have to be kind of aware of being blessed, or, kids are like, I just want to run away, but maybe the container is, I don't know exactly. I don't know where I'm going with this exactly, but it's a powerful thing and a very mysterious thing.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you spoke to the feeling of jealousy, because that's what I felt a lot when I saw it. And I would even have anxiety about it coming up because I had pre-jealousy and so, but the more I would watch it, and then as I learned more, and tried to work on myself, that I do feel like Judaism, now that I've been able to expand it for how it works for me, is that I can be that God can bless me. My idea of God can be the parent that blesses me directly. Because I think in the beginning, it made me feel like, I missed out on something that is irreplaceable. Like if I didn't have parents that would bless me on my head, then I never get blessed. And it made me feel
Totally.
sorry for myself. Yeah.
No, I'm so glad you said that, because it's something I've thought about a lot. And I'll share, um, this custom that I've kind of evolved into, that now we end our Friday night Shabbat services at Or Hadash with, which is, we make Kiddush collectively, and then we end with this blessing. And the way I've kind of evolved this ritual for our community is, I'll say something like, now we have an opportunity to both give blessing and receive blessing. And so if people are there with their families, they can use this time to put their hands on their families, put their arms around their families. But there's a lot of people who are there who are just there by themselves, who are single, who are there solo, whether or not they have families locally, they're by themselves. And so I'll say, if you feel that you have it within you to give blessing, hold your hands sort of up like this and send the blessing out to other people in the room. And if you feel tonight that you are in a place where you want to receive more, kind of cup your hands and hold them up like this and use this time to receive. And maybe it's a little of both. So maybe you have a little bit of energy to give and a little bit of energy to receive. And I love now just kind of looking out at the congregation, and a lot of people are doing a little giving and a little receiving, or all giving or all receiving. And it gives me a little bit of a snapshot into like where people are emotionally. But also it makes this blessing not only about intimate nuclear families, but about an entire community being able to give and receive a flow of blessing with one another, which I think is quite a powerful thing.
Definitely. In fact, it might have been you that taught me it's not just rabbis that can give people blessings. And now that I know I'm allowed to give people blessings, I love that, because that is one of the things I love about Judaism, is that, I'm so grateful for all my rabbi teachers, and I don't need to go through them to connect to God. I can, like we're all, yeah, what you just said. It takes away that thing about like having to do it right and missing out if you didn't get it the right way.
Totally. And I think one other thing I'll say about this kind of Birkat Kohanim, this is that, when the priests would do it, when the priests were charged with blessing the whole Israelite congregation, it wasn't even that they had some special innate power. It's that they were making themselves into channels and vessels for God's blessing. This idea that we're just letting God's blessing, this holiness flow through us. And so I think that is also an incredibly liberating idea, because it releases us from having to be these like perfect, holy, A+ kind of beings. Like there's no high bar that we have to achieve in order to be able to bless others. We just have to see ourselves as part of that conduit and flow. And can we sort of attune ourselves to the goodness that is outside of us, and then allow that to pass through us to others.
Amen.
Okay, it's a lot of me talking, so I want us to kind of shift back to you all, and I want to, let's see. I think we have time for one more. We're not going to get through all 5, but I guess I'll ask you. We could talk about Kiddush, blessing over wine and grape juice. We could talk about hand washing, or we could talk about hamotzi. Anyone have any particular preference?
Maybe hamotzi.
Hamotzi, great. Okay, so let's go back to our chart. Okay, I didn't take notes for this one, but we're going to go to hamotzi. Okay. So thinking about the last time or a significant time that you either made hamotzi, you blessed bread, challah around a Shabbat table by yourself with other people. Think about a time when you experienced this or you did this for others. You can close your eyes if you'd like. See if you can recall a specific memory of doing this ritual, being part of this ritual. What are the sensory elements that you notice? This is such a visceral sensory ritual. So what do you see? What do you see before you? What do you smell? What are you touching? What do you taste? What do you hear? Anybody want to share any of the particular sensory elements that you associate?
For me, the hamotzi is very sing-songy. It has, the one that we do is always the like hamotzi lahem, like it's both English and Hebrew. So that there's a sense of like easier accessibility for myself. And then all the like hands either hovering or touching the bread. And yeah, it's like the anticipation of then pulling it and tasting the bread. It's very, very visceral, very physical, and into, eating.
Great. Anybody else? I'm thinking about the feeling of ripping the challah with my hands. Some people, there's like the two schools of thought. Like, do you cut the challah with a knife or do you rip it with your hands? And I'm definitely a ripper. I just, that sense of like pulling apart warm bread and putting these sort of chunks of challah onto a plate and passing it around. I'm also thinking about, I love baking challah, and I went through a period where I didn't do it at all, and then a period where I've been doing it more, and I'll bake some big batches and then freeze them and then, heat them up on a Friday afternoon. But there's always that sense when someone has baked a challah homemade and it's hiding under the challah cover, and then you pull the challah cover off and there's all those oohs and ahs, like, oh, it's beautiful, especially there's toppings or a special braid, just that incredible sense. Again, like countercultural, this idea, like, yeah, you could go buy a loaf from Publix, but there is no parallel, to something that someone has spent significant time on with their own hands. And now I'm teaching Rafi, my toddler, to make challah with me, and he's sort of getting the concept of the braid a little bit, and just that gift of a handmade loaf of bread is so powerful. So when you think about the Ikar, what is the essence of this ritual? I heard anticipation. I feel like anticipation is kind of an essence word. So I'm going to put that on this side. But are there other, you can close your eyes and think about it, because it's not so obvious necessarily. Like, what, if you go back to an experience of making chamotzi and sharing challah with others, with yourself, what is the core emotion or core spiritual sense that you feel in the midst of this ritual?
I'd say community and sharing.
Mm. Yeah. Anyone else have a sense associated with this?
There's the the expression of breaking bread with friends and family,
Mhm.
which is exactly what Andrew was saying, community.
Yeah. Yeah, really brings people together in a powerful way. I also think about this moment, it's kind of the gateway to the meal. There's just such a sense of abundance, like abundance and delight, like, oh, I'm about to eat something delicious and filling and something beautiful. And I think back to what you said about kind of breaking bread. And this is, I'll just say, I think something that's really special about the blessing hamotzi in particular. We say, blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, who brings forth bread from the earth. And if you think about it, the raw material here is wheat. That's the kind of natural substance, but we, the human beings, are the one who are bringing forth bread from the earth. It requires human partnership with the natural world in order to make bread happen. This isn't just like collecting water. This isn't like just picking a fruit off the tree. Like, it requires substantial human intervention and transformation of these natural elements. And so if we had spent time in Kiddush, I would have talked a little bit about this idea of creation as being a divine and human partnership. And I think hamotzi really embodies that sense of partnership between human beings and the divine. Our creativity, with all of this abundance of elements that we have been blessed with on this earth.
Right. We take all of that for granted.
100%.
Right.
100%.
And that is a moment that if we just at that moment just put attention to all the gifts that we get,
And this is a particular ritual that I learned from a good friend of mine from rabbinical school, and I think it's related to this. His mother, may her memory be a blessing, her name was Andrea, actually. She had a ritual called the Shabbat squeeze that she made her whole family do every week. And so maybe you've seen things like this before, but everyone around the table would hold hands, and each person would go around and share something that they were proud of, that they had accomplished that week, or that they saw someone else do that week. And then they would squeeze the hand of the person next to them, and the next person would go. And then at the end, everyone would squeeze each other's hands, and then they would make hamotzi. And just, yeah, that sense of like not taking anything for granted. I think there's a lot of ways, and we could spend more time talking about this at a certain point, but a lot of ways that Shabbat rituals contain within themselves the raw elements for creating a more connected, more kind of humane dinner. Is slow everything down. They create the space and time to have real conversations, and think about our higher purpose as human beings in a way that there's just not time during the week to like really sit around a table with people and actually talk about what matters. I don't have this yet with my kids, but hopefully as they get older, we'll be able to get to that place. But there's a Priya Parker, if anyone has read her work, she does a lot of work around intentional gathering. And this was not about Shabbat, but I think it could be applied to Shabbat. She created a model for a dinner party called 15 Toasts, where essentially you have 15 guests around the table, like really high level leaders in society, and they would be invited to everyone would be invited to give a toast to a particular idea. So like, 15 toasts to creativity, 15 toasts to resilience, like thinking about a particular value. And then everyone would have to kind of get up and take their glass and offer a toast. And then the last person to go would have to sing their toast. So it would sort of encourage people to not wait till the last minute, because if you were the last one, you got to sing. And I haven't applied this to a Shabbat dinner before, but I've thought about how, we might kind of facilitate that experience for others. Anyway, I want to kind of stop here, begin to wrap up for tonight, because we, more than any sort of particular teaching about any particular ritual, what I wanted to offer tonight was this way of thinking about tafel and ikar, and just to encourage you to kind of adopt this framework as you're thinking about creating rituals for the people around you. To be intentional about, okay, what are the physical and the sensory elements? Because I think as so many of you shared, like those elements have real staying power with us. And then what is the ikar, the essence that you want your family, your community to come away with from a certain ritual? And also knowing that, our intentions only have so much power, and people will come away with, whichever essence they want to come away with. But the beautiful thing about this concept, I think, in Jewish ritual is that both elements are not fixed. They can change over time. The sensory aspects, the people around us, the words even, those can all change. And the ikar can change based on our life circumstance, based on a need we have at a particular time. We may really need peace and comfort one week, and that may impact how we do candle lighting or how we do hamotzi. But we have the power to bring that kind of intentionality to our practice of Jewish ritual, and I just think it's one of the gifts that Judaism has given to the world, and to us and to our people. So and to many people. So with that, we'll close tonight, and I just want to close and bless all of you to be able to create Shabbat wherever you are, with whomever you spend time with. And I hope that it's a sacred experience for all time. So thank you,
Rabbi. Are you going to send us
Thank you.
materials from today, from the?
Yeah. So I have all your emails from the registration, so I'll just send out the Google Doc that I was working from. So you have those definitions and some of the brainstorming we did, and yeah, feel free to use it however you'd like.
And you also send a video link?
And also, yeah, I'll send the recording as well. Yeah, it should have gone to our little cloud, so you should be able to stream it.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad you could all join me.
Hey, Rabbi Lauren.
Right. Have a great night. Take care. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.